In a small, bustling town, there lived a man who worked hard every day to provide for his family. He wasn't rich or famous, but he was known in his neighborhood for his warm smile and willingness to help others. He worked at a local factory, where he had been employed for over a decade. Life wasn't easy, but he was content. He had a roof over his head, food on the table, and a family he loved dearly. One morning, as he was walking to work, he noticed an elderly man in a wheelchair struggling to cross the busy street. The traffic was heavy, and the man looked anxious, his hands trembling as he tried to maneuver the wheelchair. Without a second thought, the factory worker rushed over to help. He gently pushed the wheelchair across the street, making sure the elderly man was safe. The man thanked him with tears in his eyes, explaining that he had been waiting for someone to help him for nearly 20 minutes. The factory worker smiled and said, "It's no trouble at all. We all need a little help sometimes." Little did he know, this small act of kindness would soon change his life in ways he could never have imagined. Later that day, as he arrived at work, his supervisor called him into the office. The factory had strict rules about punctuality, and because he had stopped to help the elderly man, he was late. Despite explaining the situation, his supervisor was unsympathetic. "Rules are rules," the supervisor said coldly. "You're fired." The man was stunned. He had never been late before, and he had always been a reliable employee. But the decision was final. He packed up his belongings and left the factory, his heart heavy with worry. How would he provide for his family now? He had bills to pay and mouths to feed. The weight of the situation pressed down on him as he walked home, unsure of what to do next. When he arrived home, his family could see the distress on his face. He explained what had happened, and though they were supportive, the air in the house was filled with tension. That night, as he lay in bed, he couldn't sleep. His mind raced with thoughts of what the future might hold. He had always believed that doing the right thing was important, but now he wondered if his kindness had cost him everything. The next morning, he decided to go back to the spot where he had helped the elderly man. He wasn't sure why, but he felt drawn to the place. As he stood there, lost in thought, a woman approached him. She had seen what had happened the day before and had been moved by his selflessness. She introduced herself as a reporter for the local newspaper and asked if she could interview him about the incident. At first, he was hesitant. He didn't think he had done anything special. But the reporter insisted, explaining that acts of kindness like his were rare and deserved to be celebrated. Reluctantly, he agreed. The interview was short, but the reporter captured his story with sincerity and respect. The next day, the article was published, and it quickly gained attention. People in the town were touched by his story, and many reached out to offer their support. Some sent messages of encouragement, while others offered practical help, like groceries or job leads. The man was overwhelmed by the outpouring of kindness. It reminded him that even in difficult times, there was still good in the world. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, he received a phone call from a local business owner who had read the article. The business owner was impressed by his character and wanted to offer him a job. It wasn't just any job, it was a position that paid better than his old one and came with opportunities for growth. The man couldn't believe his luck. He accepted the offer gratefully, feeling as though a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. As he started his new job, he couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. Losing his job had been devastating, but it had also led him to a better opportunity. More importantly, it had shown him the power of kindness and the impact it could have on others. He realized that even when life seemed unfair, doing the right thing was always worth it. Word of his new job spread quickly, and the community celebrated his good fortune. The elderly man he had helped even reached out to thank him again, expressing how much his act of kindness had meant. The two men formed an unexpected friendship, and the factory worker began to visit him regularly, helping him with errands and keeping him company. The story of the man who lost his job for helping a disabled stranger became a source of inspiration for many. It reminded people that even small acts of kindness could have a ripple effect, touching lives in ways they might never expect. And for the man at the center of it all, it was a lesson in resilience, hope, and the enduring power of doing what's right. The man's new job was a breath of fresh air. The business owner who had hired him ran a small but thriving company that specialized in home repairs and renovations. The work was different from what he was used to at the factory, but he quickly adapted. He enjoyed the hands-on nature of the job and the satisfaction of seeing a project through from start to finish. The team was small but friendly, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was part of something meaningful. His family was relieved and overjoyed by the turn of events. The fear and uncertainty that had gripped their household began to fade, replaced by a renewed sense of hope. The man's children, who had been worried about their father, now proudly told their friends about his new job. His spouse, who had stood by him through the difficult days, felt a deep sense of pride in his resilience and kindness. But life, as it often does, had more twists in store. One evening, as he was closing up the shop after a long day, he received a call from the elderly man he had helped. The man's voice was shaky, and he sounded distressed. He explained that he had fallen earlier that day and hurt his leg. He had no family nearby to help him, and he was struggling to manage on his own. Without hesitation, the man rushed over to his friend's house. When he arrived, he found the elderly man in pain, his leg swollen and bruised. He helped him into the car and drove him to the nearest hospital. The doctors confirmed that the man had a minor fracture and would need to rest for several weeks. The elderly man was worried, not just about his injury, but about how he would manage daily tasks like cooking, cleaning, and getting to his medical appointments. The factory worker, now the handyman, didn't think twice. He assured his friend that he would take care of everything. Over the next few weeks, he visited the elderly man every day after work. He cooked meals, cleaned the house, and even helped him with his physical therapy exercises. The two men grew closer, sharing stories and laughter during their time together. The elderly man often expressed his gratitude, saying, "You've done so much for me. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." But the man simply smiled and replied, "You don't have to repay me. Helping you has been its own reward." Meanwhile, at work, things were going well, but not without challenges. The business owner, impressed by the man's dedication and work ethic, began giving him more responsibilities. This included managing small teams for renovation projects. While the man was grateful for the trust placed in him, he found it difficult to balance his new role with the time he was spending helping his elderly friend. He often worked late into the night, trying to catch up on tasks he had missed during the day. One afternoon, as he was overseeing a renovation project, he made a mistake. He had been so tired from juggling his responsibilities that he misread the measurements for a cabinet installation. The mistake wasn't catastrophic, but it delayed the project and cost the company some extra materials. His boss, though understanding, reminded him of the importance of attention to detail. The man felt a pang of guilt. He had always taken pride in his work, and the error weighed heavily on him. That night, as he sat at his kitchen table, he found himself at a crossroads. He knew he couldn't keep up this pace forever. Something had to give. But how could he choose between his job, which provided for his family, and helping his friend, who relied on him so much? It felt like an impossible decision. The next morning, he decided to talk to his boss. He explained the situation honestly, sharing how he had been helping the elderly man and how it had started to affect his work. To his surprise, his boss listened intently and then said, "You're a good man." Life settled into a rhythm for the man. His days were long, but they were filled with purpose. He would wake up early, head to work, and then spend his evenings helping his elderly friend. It wasn't easy, but he had found a balance that worked. His family supported him, and his co-workers admired his dedication. Even the elderly man, who had become like family, often joked that he didn't know what he would do without him. But just when it seemed like things were falling into place, a new challenge arose. One morning, as the man was preparing to leave for work, he received a call from his elderly friend. The man's voice was weak, and he sounded even more distressed than usual. He explained that he had been feeling unwell for the past few days and had just received some troubling news from his doctor. Tests revealed that he had a serious health condition that would require ongoing treatment. The news was devastating, and the elderly man was overwhelmed. The man rushed to his friend's house, his heart heavy with worry. When he arrived, he found the elderly man sitting in his wheelchair, staring out the window with a distant look in his eyes. He had always been a proud and independent person, and the thought of relying on others for his care was difficult for him to accept. The man sat down beside him and listened as his friend poured out his fears and frustrations. "I don't want to be a burden," the elderly man said, his voice trembling. "You've already done so much for me. I can't ask you for more." The man placed a hand on his friend's shoulder and said, "You're not a burden. You're my friend. And friends take care of each other, no matter what." Despite his reassuring words, the man knew that this new situation would require more than just his help. The elderly man would need regular medical appointments, specialized care, and possibly even home modifications to make his living space more accessible. It was a lot to take on, and the man wasn't sure how he would manage it all. That evening, he sat down with his family to discuss the situation. He explained the challenges ahead and asked for their understanding and support. His spouse, who had always been his rock, assured him that they would figure it out together. "We've come this far," they said. "We'll find a way to make it work." The next day, the man decided to reach out to the community for help. He knew he couldn't do it alone, and he hoped that others would be willing to lend a hand. He started by talking to his co-workers, who had already been inspired by his story. To his surprise, they immediately offered their support. One co-worker volunteered to help with transportation to medical appointments, while another offered to assist with home repairs. Even his boss stepped in, offering flexible work hours and additional resources to help him manage his time. The man was deeply moved by the outpouring of support. As the days turned into weeks, the man and his elderly friend settled into their new routine. The community's support had made a world of difference, and the elderly man's health began to stabilize. Though he still faced challenges, he was no longer alone in facing them. The man continued to visit him regularly, but now he wasn't the only one. Neighbors, volunteers, and even strangers who had heard the story would stop by to check in, offer help, or simply share a kind word. The man's life, too, had changed in ways he hadn't expected. His co-workers, inspired by his dedication, had started their own initiatives to help others in need. One of them organized a food drive for a local shelter, while another started a mentorship program for young people in the community. The workplace had become a hub of positivity and compassion, and the man felt proud to be a part of it. But despite the progress, there were still moments of doubt. The man often wondered if he was doing enough, for his family, for his job, and for his friend. The weight of his responsibilities sometimes felt overwhelming, and there were nights when he lay awake, his mind racing with thoughts of what more he could do. It was during one of these sleepless nights that an idea began to form. The next morning, he sat down with his boss and shared his thoughts. He explained how the community support had made such a difference in his friend's life and how he wanted to find a way to give back on a larger scale. His boss listened intently, nodding in agreement. "What if we started a program through the company?" the boss suggested. "Something that helps people in need, like your friend, by providing home repairs and modifications at little or no cost." The man's eyes lit up. It was exactly the kind of initiative he had been imagining. Together, they began to outline the details of the program. They would call it Home for Hope, and it would focus on helping elderly and disabled individuals make their homes safer and more accessible. The company would provide the labor and materials, and they would partner with local organizations to identify those in need. The idea quickly gained traction. The man's co-workers were eager to get involved, and the local community rallied behind the initiative. Donations began to pour in, and soon the program was ready to launch. The man felt a sense of excitement and purpose that he hadn't felt in a long time. This was his chance to make a real difference, not just for his friend, but for others who were facing similar struggles. The first project under the Home for Hope program was, of course, for the elderly man. The team worked tirelessly to install ramps, widen doorways, and make other modifications to ensure his home was fully accessible. When the work was done, the elderly man was overcome with emotion. "I never thought I'd see the day when my home would feel like a place of freedom again," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you." The man smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what it was all about, helping others, creating hope, and building a community where no one had to face their struggles alone. The success of the first project inspired the team to take on more, and soon the Home for Hope program was making a difference in the lives of countless individuals. But the man's journey didn't stop there. As the program grew, so did his role within the company. His boss recognized his leadership and dedication, and he was promoted to oversee the Home for Hope initiative. It was a big responsibility, but the man embraced it with open arms. He knew that this was his calling, to use his skills and experiences to help others and to inspire those around him to do the same. The promotion came with its own set of challenges. Balancing his new role with his personal responsibilities wasn't easy, but the man was determined to make it work. He leaned on his family for support, and they continued to be his source of strength. His spouse, who had always believed in him, encouraged him to keep going, even on the toughest days. "You're doing something incredible," they said. "Don't ever forget that." As the man reflected on everything that had happened, he realized how far he had come. Losing his job had felt like the end of the world at the time, but it had led him to a path he never could have imagined. He had found a new purpose, built meaningful connections, and created a legacy of kindness that would continue to grow. One evening, as he sat with his elderly friend, watching the sunset, the man felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges to face, but he had learned to find joy in the journey. He had discovered that true success wasn't about wealth or status, it was about making a difference in the lives of others and leaving the world a little better than he found it. The Home for Hope program continued to flourish, touching more lives with each passing month. The man, now fully immersed in his role as the program's leader, found himself busier than ever. But it was a good kind of busy, one filled with purpose and fulfillment. Every project brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to make a difference. Whether it was building a ramp for a wheelchair-bound grandmother or installing grab bars for a veteran struggling with mobility, each task reminded him why he had started this journey in the first place. One day, as the man was reviewing applications for the next Home for Hope project, he came across a story that struck a chord. It was about a single mother who had been injured in a car accident and was now unable to work. She lived in a small, run-down house with her 2 young children, and the place was in desperate need of repairs. The roof leaked, the floors were uneven, and the bathroom was barely functional. The woman's application was heartfelt, filled with gratitude for even being considered. She wrote, "I don't expect much, but if there's any way to make our home safer for my kids, would be forever grateful." The man knew immediately that this was the next project for Home for Hope. He gathered his team and shared the woman's story. Everyone was moved by her situation and eager to help. They began planning the repairs, ensuring that every detail was taken care of. The man even reached out to local businesses for donations of materials, and once again, the community stepped up in a big way. When the day of the project arrived, the man and his team worked tirelessly from sunrise to sunset. They fixed the roof, repaired the floors, and completely renovated the bathroom, making it safe and accessible. The woman and her children watched in awe as their home was transformed. When the work was done, the woman broke down in tears. "I can't believe this is the same house," she said, her voice trembling. "You've given us more than just a safe place to live. You've given us hope." The man felt a lump in his throat as he hugged her. Moments like these reminded him why he had started the Home for Hope program. It wasn't just about fixing houses, it was about restoring dignity, creating opportunities, and showing people that they weren't alone. As the program gained more recognition, the man began receiving invitations to speak at community events and local schools. At first, he was hesitant. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight and didn't consider himself a public speaker. But his boss encouraged him, saying, "Your story is powerful. It's not just about what you've done, it's about what others can do when they're inspired by your example." Reluctantly, the man agreed. His first speaking engagement was at a high school, where he shared his journey with a group of students. He talked about losing his job, helping the elderly man, and how one act of kindness had led to so many others. He encouraged the students to look for opportunities to help those around them, no matter how small the gesture might seem. "You never know how much of an impact you can have," he said. "Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life." The students listened intently, and many approached him afterward to thank him for his words. One young girl even told him, "You've inspired me to start a kindness club at school. I want to make a difference, just like you." The man was humbled by the response. He hadn't expected his story to resonate so deeply, but it reminded him of the power of sharing our experiences. Each speaking engagement became an opportunity to connect with others and spread the message of compassion and community. Meanwhile, his elderly friend continued to thrive, thanks to the ongoing support of the community. The man still visited him regularly, and their bond had only grown stronger. One afternoon, as they sat together sipping tea, the elderly man said, "You've done so much for me, but I want to do something for you. I've been thinking about starting a small fund to support the Home for Hope program. It's my way of giving back." The man was touched by the offer but hesitated. "You don't have to do that," he said. "You've already given me so much, your friendship, your trust, your stories." But the elderly man insisted. "This program has changed my life, and I know it's changing others too. I want to be a part of that." In the end, the man agreed, and the fund became another source of support for Home for Hope. It was a testament to the ripple effect of kindness, how one good deed could inspire another, creating a cycle of generosity and compassion. As the man reflected on everything that had happened, he realized how much he had grown. He had started this journey as a man who had lost his job and felt like he had nothing to offer. But through his actions, he had discovered his purpose and touched countless lives along the way. He had learned that true success wasn't about what you had, but what you gave. Yet, even as he celebrated the program's successes, he knew there was still more work to be done. The need in the community was great, and he was determined to keep expanding Home for Hope. He began exploring partnerships with other organizations and even started training volunteers to take on more projects. The program was becoming a movement, and the man was at the heart of it. One evening, as he sat with his family, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. His spouse and children had been his constant support, cheering him on every step of the way. "You've made us so proud," his spouse said, squeezing his hand. "You've shown us what it means to truly live with purpose." The Home for Hope program had become a beacon of light in the community, but as it grew, so did the challenges. The man, now deeply committed to his role, found himself facing new obstacles that tested his resilience and determination. The demand for the program's services was overwhelming, and while the community's support was strong, resources were often stretched thin. There were days when the man felt the weight of it all, wondering if he could keep up with the growing needs. One particularly tough week, the team was working on two major projects simultaneously. One was for a family whose home had been damaged in a storm, and the other was for an elderly couple who needed their entire house made wheelchair accessible. The man was juggling schedules, coordinating volunteers, and managing budgets, all while trying to ensure that both projects were completed on time. The stress was mounting, and he could feel the pressure taking its toll. One evening, after a long day on site, the man returned home exhausted. His family could see the fatigue in his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. His spouse sat him down and said gently, "You're doing amazing things, but you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of yourself too." The man knew they were right, but the thought of slowing down felt impossible. There were so many people counting on him, and he didn't want to let anyone down. Still, he realized that if he burned out, he wouldn't be able to help anyone. He decided to take a step back and reassess. The next day, he called a meeting with his team. He shared his concerns and asked for their input. Together, they brainstormed ways to streamline their processes and make the workload more manageable. They decided to create smaller, specialized teams for different aspects of the projects, such as construction, fundraising, and community outreach. This way, no one person would be overwhelmed, and everyone could focus on their strengths. The new approach made a significant difference. Projects began to run more smoothly, and the team felt more energized and motivated. The man also made a conscious effort to delegate tasks and trust his team to handle them. It wasn't easy. He had always been someone who liked to be hands-on, but he knew it was necessary for the program's long-term success. As the weeks went by, the man began to feel a renewed sense of balance. He made time for his family, ensuring that he was present for important moments and not just physically there but mentally and emotionally engaged. He also started taking small breaks during the day, whether it was a short walk or a quiet moment with a cup of tea. These little pauses helped him recharge and approach his work with fresh energy. One of the most rewarding moments during this time came when the team completed the project for the elderly couple. The couple, who had been married for over 50 years, had struggled to navigate their home after the husband suffered a stroke. The modifications made by the Home for Hope team, a stair lift, widened doorways, and a fully accessible bathroom, gave them a new lease on life. When the work was done, the wife hugged the man tightly and said, "You've given us more than just a safe home. You've given us the gift of independence." The man felt a surge of pride and gratitude. Moments like these reminded him why he had started this journey and why it was worth every challenge. But even as he celebrated the successes, he knew there was still more work to be done. One day, while reviewing applications, he came across a story that stopped him in his tracks. It was from a young boy, no more than 12 years old, who had written on behalf of his grandmother. The boy explained that his grandmother had raised him after his parents passed away, but now she was struggling with arthritis and could no longer do the things she used to. Their home was falling apart, and he was worried about her safety. The boy's letter ended with a simple but powerful sentence, "I just want my grandma to be happy and safe." The man was deeply moved by the boy's love and determination. He immediately added the project to the list and began planning how to make it happen. But this time, he decided to involve the community in a bigger way. He organized a fundraiser, reaching out to local businesses, schools, and organizations for support. The response was overwhelming. People donated money, materials, and their time, eager to be part of something meaningful. The day of the project was unlike any other. Volunteers of all ages showed up to help, from teenagers to retirees. The man was amazed by the sense of unity and purpose that filled the air. Even the young boy who had written the letter was there, working alongside the team with a determination that inspired everyone. When the work was done, the boy's grandmother stood in her newly renovated home, tears streaming down her face. "I can't believe this is real," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you for giving us a fresh start." The boy hugged the man tightly and whispered, "You're my hero." The man felt a lump in his throat. He had never thought of himself as a hero, but in that moment, he realized that heroism wasn't about grand gestures or fame. It was about showing up, doing the right thing, and making a difference in someone's life, no matter how small it might seem. As the weeks turned into months, the Home for Hope program continued to grow, touching more lives and inspiring more people to get involved. The man's journey had come full circle, from losing his job to finding his purpose and creating a legacy of kindness. He had faced challenges, but each one had made him stronger and more determined. One evening, as he sat with his family, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. His spouse and children had been his constant support, cheering him on every step of the way. "You've made us so proud," his spouse said, squeezing his hand. "You've shown us what it means to truly live with purpose." The Home for Hope program had become a cornerstone of the community, a symbol of what could be achieved when people came together with a shared purpose. The man, who had once felt lost and uncertain, now stood at the heart of a movement that was changing lives in profound ways. But as the program continued to grow, so did the complexity of its challenges. The man knew that to sustain its impact, they would need to think bigger and bolder. One of the most pressing issues was funding. While the community had been incredibly generous, the program's needs were expanding faster than the donations could keep up. The man spent countless hours writing grant proposals, meeting with potential donors, and brainstorming creative fundraising ideas. It was exhausting work, but he was determined to find a way to keep the program thriving. One afternoon, he received a call from a representative of a national foundation that supported community initiatives. They had heard about Home for Hope and were interested in learning more. The man's heart raced as he scheduled a meeting. This could be the breakthrough they needed. The meeting went better than he could have imagined. The foundation was impressed by the program's impact and the man's dedication. They offered a substantial grant that would cover not only the immediate needs but also allow for expansion into neighboring communities. The man was overjoyed. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for. With the new funding, the program was able to hire additional staff, purchase better equipment, and take on more projects. The man felt a renewed sense of energy and purpose. He knew that this was just the beginning, that with the right resources, they could reach even more people in need. But with growth came new responsibilities. The man found himself spending more time in meetings and less time on the ground, working directly with the families they were helping. He missed the hands-on aspect of the work, the feeling of seeing a project come to life and the joy on someone's face when their home was transformed. He struggled with the balance between leadership and involvement, wanting to be everywhere at once. One evening, as he sat at his desk reviewing budgets and reports, his spouse walked in and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're doing incredible things," they said. "But don't forget why you started this. Sometimes, you need to step away from the paperwork and reconnect with the heart of it all." The man knew they were right. The next day, he decided to visit one of the ongoing projects. It was a home renovation for a single father who had been injured in a workplace accident and was struggling to provide for his two young children. The man rolled up his sleeves and joined the team, working side by side with the volunteers. As he hammered nails and painted walls, he felt a sense of fulfillment that no meeting or report could ever provide. The father, watching the team work, approached the man with tears in his eyes. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You've given us more than just a safe home. You've given us hope for the future." The man smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection. This was why he had started Home for Hope, to make a tangible difference in people's lives. He realized that while leadership was important, it was equally important to stay grounded and connected to the work itself. As the program continued to expand, the man began to explore new ways to amplify its impact. He started a mentorship initiative, pairing experienced volunteers with newcomers to teach them the skills needed for home repairs and modifications. He also launched a storytelling campaign, sharing the stories of the families they had helped to inspire others to get involved. The campaign went viral, attracting attention from media outlets and even catching the eye of a popular television show that featured community heroes. The man was invited to appear on the show, and though he was nervous, he saw it as an opportunity to spread the message of Home for Hope on a larger scale. During the interview, he shared his journey, from losing his job to building a program that was transforming lives. He spoke about the power of kindness, the importance of community, and the belief that everyone deserved a safe and comfortable home. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from across the country, and volunteers signed up in droves. The man was humbled by the outpouring of support, but he also felt a renewed sense of responsibility. He knew that with this increased visibility came the need to ensure that the program remained true to its mission. One of the most meaningful outcomes of the television appearance was a partnership with a national organization that specialized in disaster relief. They saw the potential for Home for Hope to assist in rebuilding communities after natural disasters, and together, they began planning their first joint project. It was a daunting task, but the man was excited about the opportunity to make an even greater impact. As the man reflected on everything that had happened, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had started this journey as a man who had lost his job and felt like he had nothing to offer. But through his actions, he had discovered his purpose and touched countless lives along the way. He had learned that true success wasn't about what you had, but what you gave. Yet, even as he celebrated the program's successes, he knew there was still more work to be done. The need in the community, and beyond, was great, and he was determined to keep expanding Home for Hope. He began exploring partnerships with other organizations and even started training volunteers to take on more projects. The program was becoming a movement, and the man was at the heart of it. One evening, as he sat with his family, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. His spouse and children had been his constant support, cheering him on every step of the way. "You've made us so proud," his spouse said, squeezing his hand. "You've shown us what it means to truly live with purpose." The Home for Hope program had grown beyond anything the man could have imagined. What had started as a small initiative to help one elderly man had blossomed into a nationwide movement, touching countless lives and inspiring communities to come together. The man, now a respected leader and advocate for kindness, often found himself reflecting on how far he had come. Yet, despite the program's success, he knew that the work was never truly done. There were always more people to help, more homes to repair, and more hope to spread. One of the most significant milestones for Home for Hope came when they partnered with the National Disaster Relief Organization to rebuild a community devastated by a hurricane. The project was massive, requiring months of planning and the coordination of hundreds of volunteers. The man and his team worked tirelessly, traveling to the affected area and setting up a temporary headquarters. They faced countless challenges, limited resources, unpredictable weather, and the emotional toll of seeing so much destruction. But they also witnessed incredible resilience and the power of human connection. The man often found himself in awe of the people they were helping. One family, in particular, stood out to him. They had lost everything in the hurricane: their home, their belongings, even their sense of security. But despite their losses, they remained hopeful and grateful for the support they were receiving. The man spent hours talking with them, listening to their stories and sharing words of encouragement. When their new home was finally completed, the family hugged him tightly, tears streaming down their faces. "You've given us more than just a house," the mother said. "You've given us a future." Moments like these reminded the man why he had started this journey. It wasn't about recognition or accolades, it was about making a difference, one family at a time. He often told his team, "Every nail we hammer, every wall we paint, every smile we see, it all matters. We're not just building homes, we're building hope." As the disaster relief project came to an end, the man returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that Home for Hope had the potential to do even more, and he began exploring new ways to expand its reach. One idea that had been on his mind was creating a training center where people could learn the skills needed for home repairs and modifications. He envisioned a place where individuals from all walks of life could come together, learn, and then use their skills to help others in their own communities. With the support of his team and the community, the man began turning his vision into reality. They secured a building, gathered materials, and recruited instructors. The training center quickly became a hub of activity, filled with the sounds of laughter, learning, and the occasional hammering of nails. The man loved visiting the center, watching as people gained confidence and skills, and knowing that they would go on to make a difference in their own way. One day, as he was walking through the center, he noticed a young woman working intently on a carpentry project. She had been quiet and reserved when she first joined the program, but now she was smiling and chatting with the other participants. The man approached her and asked how she was enjoying the experience. "It's changed my life," she said, her eyes shining. "I never thought I could do something like this, but now I feel like I can do anything. I want to use these skills to help others, just like you've helped me." The man felt a lump in his throat. This was what it was all about, empowering others to create their own ripples of kindness. He knew that the training center would be a lasting legacy, one that would continue to inspire and uplift long after he was gone. As the years went by, the man continued to lead Home for Hope with passion and dedication. He faced challenges, of course, funding shortages, logistical hurdles, and the occasional setback, but he never lost sight of the program's mission. He also made sure to stay connected to the heart of the work, spending time with the families they helped and sharing their stories to inspire others. One evening, as he sat with his family, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. His spouse and children had been his constant support, cheering him on every step of the way. "You've made us so proud," his spouse said, squeezing his hand. "You've shown us what it means to truly live with purpose." The man smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He knew that his journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever came next. With kindness, compassion, and the support of his community, he knew he could continue making a difference, one act of hope at a time. As he looked out at the sunset, he thought about the countless lives that had been touched by Home for Hope. He thought about the elderly man who had started it all, the families they had helped, and the volunteers who had given their time and energy. He thought about the young woman at the training center and the countless others who would go on to create their own ripples of kindness. The man knew that his story was just one of many, a small part of a larger tapestry of hope and humanity. And as he sat there, surrounded by the people he loved, he felt a deep sense of peace. He had started this journey with nothing but a kind heart and a willingness to help. And in the end, that had been enough to change the world.